7 decades since the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, around 80 new fragments of the ancient texts have been revealed to the public.
In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat near the Dead Sea, threw a stone into a cave and heard pottery break. Inside were sealed clay jars containing ancient fragments of leather, parchment, and papyrus. These became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dead Sea region.
One of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The scrolls included some of the oldest known biblical manuscripts, along with religious writings, commentaries, legal texts, and community documents from the ancient Jewish world. Their value was not just their age. They gave scholars physical evidence of Scripture before later copying, translation, and standardization shaped the versions used today. A fragmented archive. For decades, scholars reconstructed the scrolls by hand. They compared handwriting, matched torn edges, studied ink traces, and debated damaged letters. The problem was scale. The Dead Sea Scrolls are thousands of fragments spread across different caves, collections, photographs, and archives. Some pieces are readable. Others contain only a few faded marks. Many fragments are damaged or visible only under infrared imaging. Some pieces that appear blank still contain traces of ink. AI became useful because it could compare large numbers of manuscript images at once. It could measure handwriting features, letter spacing, stroke direction, and ink traces more consistently than manual analysis alone. The goal was not to let a machine interpret Scripture. It was to help scholars see evidence they might have missed. The Cave of Horror. One major recent discovery came from the Cave of Horror, a site in the Judean desert where earlier excavations found the remains of around 40 people believed to be Jewish refugees from the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome. In 2021, archaeologists recovered new scroll fragments from the cave. They were small, damaged, and difficult to read, but they belonged to the book of the 12 minor prophets, including passages from Zechariah and Nahum. The fragments were written in Greek. That matters because most Dead Sea Scrolls are in Hebrew or Aramaic. Greek fragments show that some Jewish communities in the region were preserving Scripture in the wider language of the Mediterranean world. The discovery raised questions about who used these texts, why they were preserved in Greek, and how their wording compared with later biblical traditions. Reading what human eyes could not see. To study the fragments, researchers used high-resolution imaging, infrared photography, and multispectral scans. These methods reveal ink that normal light cannot show. AI tools then analyze the images by comparing letter shapes, writing angles, spacing, and repeated handwriting patterns. This is important because ancient scribes often wrote in very similar styles. AI can measure small differences that are difficult to detect manually. In one AI-assisted study of the Great Isaiah Scroll, researchers found evidence that the manuscript may have been written by two scribes with very similar handwriting, not one. That changed how scholars understood scribal work behind the scrolls. A small handwriting shift can suggest a different scribe. A different scribe can point to a different copying setting. That can change how we understand where the scrolls came from. The human side of the manuscripts. Handwriting analysis also brings the people behind the scrolls into focus. A manuscript is not only a text. It records the work of the person who copied it. Letter size, stroke pressure, rhythm, corrections, and mistakes. The Cave of Horror makes this especially important. These texts were connected to people living through Roman violence, displacement, and fear. Some scrolls were likely carried or hidden by communities under extreme pressure. That does not mean every irregular mark proves fear, but it does mean the scrolls were not abstract religious objects. They belonged to real people facing real danger. They preserved these texts because they considered them worth saving during crisis. Not one simple library. Many scholars have linked the scrolls to a Jewish community near Qumran, often identified with the Essenes. According to this view, the group copied and stored religious writings in nearby caves. The scrolls include Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and older scripts. They contain biblical manuscripts, commentaries, community rules, prayers, and writings that did not become part of the later Bible. AI-assisted handwriting analysis adds to this by showing multiple scribes and different scribal habits. This suggests the caves may have preserved writings from more than one community. Some texts may have come from Qumran, while others may reflect wider Jewish traditions from the region. The scrolls are not only evidence of one sect's beliefs. They are evidence of a diverse textual culture. The missing books. One major mystery is the absence of the Book of Esther. Fragments from many books of the Hebrew Bible have been found, but no confirmed fragment of Esther has been identified. Some scholars suggest the Qumran community may not have considered Esther authoritative, possibly because it does not mention God directly. But absence does not always mean rejection. The scrolls may not represent a complete library. They may simply show what certain communities had, copied, carried, or managed to hide. In a crisis, people preserve what they can. Some texts survive because they were available and valued. Others disappear because they were lost, damaged, or never copied in that place. The missing books remind us that the Dead Sea Scrolls are a surviving selection, not a complete record. Scripture before standardization. The Greek Cave of Horror fragments do not match later standard Greek traditions perfectly. Word choices differ, phrases appear in slightly different forms, and some readings seem closer to other textual traditions. The Hebrew scrolls show the same pattern. Some manuscripts closely match the later Masoretic text, the standardized Hebrew Bible, behind many modern translations. Others preserve different readings. Some differences are minor, like spelling or word order. Others suggest that multiple versions of biblical books existed at the same time. This is one of the biggest things the scrolls reveal. Scripture was copied, transmitted, corrected, and preserved over centuries before one version became dominant. The Dead Sea Scrolls show that process before later standardization. What AI actually changed? AI did not uncover a secret Bible or replace scholars. It improved the evidence. It helped compare handwriting, detect faint traces, test whether one or multiple scribes worked on a text, and organize patterns too large for manual comparison. That gives scholars a clearer picture of the scrolls. They were copied by multiple scribes. They preserve different textual traditions. They show that Scripture existed in more than one form during the Second Temple period. Later, biblical standardization was a historical process, not a simple chain from one original text to the modern Bible. That is the real discovery. Erased texts and hidden layers. Some ancient manuscripts contain erased or reused writing. Parchment was expensive, so scribes sometimes scraped off older text and wrote over it. These are called palimpsests. Advanced imaging can reveal traces beneath the visible writing. AI can help detect those traces and separate ink from damaged parchment. This matters because erased writing may preserve earlier versions, abandoned readings, or texts that do not survive elsewhere. But the reason for erasure is not always clear. It may have been practical rather than theological. AI can show that hidden writing exists. Scholars still have to interpret what it means, why it changes everything. The Dead Sea Scrolls matter because they show Scripture before it was fully standardized. They show scribes copying, correcting, preserving, and sometimes revising texts. They show Jewish communities living with multiple textual traditions. AI did not create this evidence. It made more of it visible. It helped researchers detect handwriting differences, compare fragments at scale, and study damaged writing more clearly. The result is a more complex view of biblical history. The scrolls were not just old copies of the Bible. They were fragments of a world where Scripture was still being copied, debated, translated, and protected. That is why they still matter. They show that the history of Scripture was human, layered, and shaped over time.